Dubai, 2016. On a scorching morning in Dubai Marina, a man walked toward his office through the shadow of the world's most aggressive skyline. He never made it. Without warning, a deafening roar tore through the humid air as tons of steel and shattering glass rained down across 6 lanes of traffic, crushing a row of supercars and killing him instantly. The ground crew saw the disaster coming. They were frantically waving laborers and supercars back, but it was already too late. What almost nobody understood that morning was that the skyscraper's massive external mechanical structure had already been compromised. A lethal combination of extreme heat expansion and creeping foundation shift on unstable, reclaimed coastal land had put the building in a position so precarious it was ready to fail under the slightest thermal spike. This is not a freak accident. This is not an act of God, and it is not bad luck. This is a documented, reconstructible chain of corporate shortcuts, ignored sensor warnings, and structural vulnerabilities that ended with a man dead on a marina sidewalk, a staggering $272 million payout, and UAE authorities scrambling to quietly rewrite the Federation's entire construction code. By the end of this, you will see why the independent forensic investigators never fully agreed on who was ultimately to blame. The luxury tower had been completed just months prior, a gleaming, high-concept vertical city marketed as the pinnacle of elite desert living. On paper, the project was a triumph of modern engineering. In reality, it was a ticking time bomb built on shifting sand, buckling under its own immense weight, and hidden behind a flawless facade of polished glass. This is the story of how Dubai's relentless race to the sky triggered an unprecedented engineering nightmare. To understand how a brand-new, multi-million-dollar tower in Dubai Marina could suffer such a catastrophic structural failure, you have to look past the luxury marble and dive straight into the engineering timeline. The project broke ground during the peak of the city's real estate boom, positioned on a prime slice of reclaimed coastal land right on the edge of the Arabian Gulf. From day one, the soil conditions were a logistical nightmare. The entire foundation rested on marine sand and hypersaline groundwater, requiring a massive network of friction piles driven deep into the bedrock to keep the tower from sinking. As the concrete core shot upward, engineers faced a brutal adversary: the extreme Arabian climate. During peak summer, ambient temperatures in Dubai easily cross 122 degrees Fahrenheit. For a building wrapped entirely in heavy structural steel and reflective glass, this meant the exterior facade was subjected to radical thermal expansion. The metal skeleton would literally grow and shift by several inches during the day, then contract violently at night as the desert air cooled. To counteract this, the design specified a complex, automated hydraulic dampening system built into the upper mechanical floors. This system was designed to absorb both the high-altitude wind loads from the Gulf and the intense thermal stress. However, as construction fell behind schedule due to aggressive handover deadlines, critical shortcuts were taken. Sensor logs later revealed that as early as mid-2015, the foundation began experiencing micro-settlement issues. The reclaimed land was shifting unevenly, causing a slight fraction of a degree tilt in the primary vertical columns, instead of halting the project to perform hyper-expensive pressure grouting to stabilize the soil. The development firm pushed forward. They calibrated the internal sensors to ignore the minor structural deflections. When winter transitioned into the intense heat of early 2016, the building's exterior steel frame expanded past its physical tolerance limits. Trapped by an uneven foundation that couldn't give way, the stress built up silently until the structural load-bearing joints reached a fatal breaking point. The structural failure at Dubai Marina was not an isolated incident of bad luck. It was a systemic echo of a silent crisis plaguing several mega-projects across the region. As investigators dug through the data, they found chilling parallels to past engineering close calls that the public was never supposed to see. In a city where buildings are thrown up at a record-breaking pace, the same fundamental vulnerabilities, leaks, glass fatigue, heat expansion, and empty units, keep showing up behind different luxury facades. Look across downtown or Business Bay, and you'll find the same invisible war against physics. When you build a megatall tower on a foundation of reclaimed sand, water is your constant enemy. hypersaline Gulf water aggressively attacks the concrete under infrastructure, seeking out the tiniest microfissures. Once inside, the salt crystallizes and expands, a process known as concrete spalling, which slowly eats away at the structural integrity from the bottom up. At the same time, the intense desert sun subjects the upper floors to extreme glass fatigue. On a typical July afternoon, the temperature differential between the air-conditioned interior glass and the blistering exterior surface can exceed 60 degrees. This creates massive thermal stress, causing panels to experience spontaneous shattering. To hide these flaws, developers frequently swap out compromised materials during late-night maintenance windows, far from the eyes of tenants or regulators. Compounding this engineering strain is a financial reality that no one talks about: empty units. When a luxury skyscraper sits half-occupied, the uneven distribution of internal weight, from thousands of unfilled water tanks, uninstalled heavy marble flooring, and stagnant climate control zones, creates unpredictable load imbalances. The building doesn't settle uniformly. Instead, it twists. The Marina disaster proved that when you combine shifting foundations, thermal expansion, and unmitigated structural stress, the laws of physics will eventually override any marketing brochure. When the steel and glass shattered across the marina that morning, it instantly tore through the lives of real people. The man who died on the sidewalk was David Wicks, a 38-year-old expat who had come to Dubai to build a life. He was a brilliant mathematics graduate who spent his days working as a quantitative analyst in Dubai's financial district. Those who knew him didn't describe a cutthroat corporate climber. They remembered an incredibly generous man who quietly used his wealth to fund education initiatives for low-income workers across the emirate. He was simply walking to a morning meeting when the structural joints gave way above him. He never stood a chance. The collapse triggered immediate chaos. A 2-ton structural cladding element punched entirely through the roof of a nearby luxury showroom, forcing panic-stricken staff to flee into the streets. Ruptured water mains flooded the subterranean parking levels, trapping high-end sports cars in rising, muddy water. Nearby high-rises were hastily evacuated as authorities scrambled to isolate compromised gas and power lines. 3 other pedestrians were severely injured by flying glass shrapnel, including an executive sitting in the back of his chauffeured car when a piece of structural steel crushed the vehicle's cabin. The legal fallout was swift, aggressive, and incredibly expensive. Wicks's family, alongside the other victim and affected property owners, launched a massive multi-party lawsuit that targeted every single entity involved in the tower's creation: the master developer, the main contractors, the structural engineering consultancy, and the facility management firm. The litigation culminated in a staggering $272.5 million settlement, marking it as one of the largest construction-related payouts in the history of the region. $250 million paid out because a corporate boardroom decided that protecting a luxury brand's timeline was more important than addressing a failing foundation. For David Wicks's family, the record-breaking sum offered no comfort. It was just a brutal, quantifiable monument to a completely preventable corporate disaster. The Marina disaster forced Dubai to look squarely into its own architectural future, and what it saw was a terrifying risk profile. In the immediate aftermath, UAE authorities quietly froze construction permits across dozens of active sites in downtown and Business Bay. A special task force was assembled to inspect every skyscraper built on reclaimed land, mandating the retrofitting of real-time fiber optic strain sensors and mandatory foundation grouting. The building code was overhauled, doubling the safety margins for heat expansion and penalizing developers who ignored structural alerts. But the underlying threat remains. Hundreds of luxury towers built during the initial real estate gold rush are now hitting their second and third decades of exposure to the brutal Gulf climate. The salt continues to eat at the concrete, the sun continues to fatigue the glass, and the reclaimed land continues its slow, inevitable microshifting beneath the sand. Today, the gleaming tower in Dubai Marina stands fully repaired, its glass facade completely restored, and its luxury units relisted on the global market. Wealthy investors walk its corridors, oblivious to the fact that the foundations beneath them fought a losing battle against physics on a humid morning in 2016. The data proves that when you race to build the impossible on a foundation of sand, the margin between structural marvel and engineering catastrophe is paper-thin. David Wicks was killed by a skyscraper that was one thermal spike away from failure. And as the desert heat continues to rise, the question isn't if another joint will reach its breaking point. It's which tower is next. If you want to uncover the engineering cover-ups and institutional failures behind the world's most troubled megaprojects, hit subscribe.